for the midterms. But Speaker John Boehner dodged repeated questions from our Luke Russert on whether the GOP should be fundraising off Benghazi.
Speaker Boehner, 4 Americans died in Benghazi. Should the NRCC fundraise off of your efforts with the Select Committee?
Our focus is on getting the answers to those families who lost their loved ones, period.
But should the NRCC, they're fundraising off of it right now. Is that a wise thing to do?
Our focus is getting the truth for these 4 families and for the American people.
We're joined now by MSNBC Managing Editor Daphne Linzer and BuzzFeed Senior Political Writer McKay Coppins. Happy Friday to both of you.
You too.
Let me read to you, and I'm sure you've already seen, this is how the New York Times editorial board put it this morning. The hottest competition in Washington this week is among House Republicans vying for a seat on the Benghazi Kangaroo Court, also known as the Select House Committee to inflate a tragedy into a scandal. Democrats who are now debating whether to participate in the committee shouldn't hesitate to skip it. Their presence would only lend legitimacy to a farce. Now, of course, the opposing view is you don't want to be seen as running away if you're a Democrat, afraid of an investigation. This is how the Republicans are going to paint it. We are expecting to hear from Nancy Pelosi in the next hour. Daphne, what's she going to do?
I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz kind of guided everyone there. I don't think they're going to run away. I do think that they're going to participate. They want to be able to structure and impact the discussion as much as they can. They want to be able to come out immediately in front of the cameras after every session to, kind of characterize the situation as political, frankly. I think, the reporting that Luke did with the speaker just speaks for itself. I mean, this is a fundraising opportunity in place where there's very little right now for the Republicans to fundraise off of.
And we're seeing some of the Democrats as they were going into that meeting, and there was Nancy Pelosi. On the conservative side of things, Charles Krauthammer in the Washington Post writes this: all that matters is whether the committee produces new, important facts. If it does, it will be impossible to ignore. So what do you think, McKay? Is there an argument Democrats should let this play out? Are they nervous about that?
No, I mean, you hear from a lot of Democrats saying that if they, it's not just a matter of, not wanting to cooperate with this sham, as Debbie Wasserman Schultz called it. It's also a matter of, if they're not there, what does this become? It becomes an open forum for Republicans for days to attack the administration, right? And if Democrats aren't there to at least add a rebuttal, right, then it's going to become days and days of political theater. And this feels like a story, Benghazi feels like a story where there are people on both sides who have paid a lot of attention, and then there's a wide swath in the middle who, know something about it but aren't incredibly familiar with the details of it. And so a lot of this in the midterms and in 2016, obviously, is going to come down to who is louder in trumpeting their view of the case, their view of the story. And that's how the story is going to play out for a lot of voters.
And will there be a headline in some instances? Right. And the difference between something that's new and something that's significant and new can be very wide, doesn't necessarily change what the conversation is. So I'm wondering, Daphne, after, 13 hearings, 25,000 pages of documents have been released, what are the chances that there's a there? Because Republicans would argue that this recent email that has brought all of this back into the news is there. What are the chances that something new and potentially damaging come out?
Right. Well, this is the farce of the Krauthammer column. I mean, facts are facts if you decide that they're real and they're facts. I think everybody is looking for something on the Republican side, on the conservative side, to tar the administration with going into yet another election on this issue. And this is the midterms. There's a lot riding on the midterms. But, the Benghazi thing is a lot like Obamacare. I mean, we've already been through this a few times, and we've already gone through an election with it. And, I don't see that working out, even though, as I said, I think there's not much left for them to play with.
A lot of people that I talk to, analysts, say, look, I think that it's going to do two things. It's going to fire up the base for Republicans in the midterms. Clearly, that's what the Republicans are aiming at. It's not going to bring new voters to the poll or sway other voters. But the second thing, obviously, is 2016. And that was what Mitt Romney was talking about this morning on Morning Joe. And he says this does bring into question her tenure as Secretary of State. Let me play that.
I think her record there is a very substantial liability for her campaign in 2016. And I think it's going to raise a lot of questions about her capacity to actually accomplish things of significance, particularly on foreign soil.
The House panel does have subpoena power. McKay, will they subpoena Hillary Clinton?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. I think that Mitt Romney knows better than a lot of Republicans that their party has not always been great at prosecuting this issue in an election setting.
Although the person to head this committee is a prosecutor by all rights, a talented prosecutor.
Trey Gowdy is very talented.
16 years of experience.
And I think a lot of Democrats are underestimating him, frankly. I think he's very talented, very articulate. And while we see liberals trying to paint him as somebody who's just, you know, a flamethrower, Tea Party crazy person, in fact, he's pretty serious. And I think that he could.
And maybe a little bit ambitious?
Just a little. Just a little. But I think that the important thing here for Republicans is to make it, obviously this has become very politicized. They need Democrats to participate here because they need to add some credibility or legitimacy to this investigation. They don't want it to look like just a partisan sideshow.
There is this sense, though, I think, among a lot of Democrats, a nervousness, not just about this energizing the base, obviously, but I'm sure you saw the big headline in Politico this morning. Koch brothers, $125 million that they're going to pump in to the midterms on a spending spree. And then you've got, on the other side of this, President Obama, who's been out and about. He's going to do it again today. Here's part of his message from a Democratic fundraiser last night.
Democrats have a congenital defect when it comes to our politics, and that is we like voting during presidential years, and during the midterms, we don't vote. We're going to have to make sure that we are coming out with the same urgency and the same enthusiasm that we typically show during presidential years.
So the big question for the midterms becomes, can they and how do they do that?
Okay, so you want to know how you fire up the Democratic base? Here you go. You fundraise off Benghazi. That's a great idea. As soon as the Republicans start doing that, then that fires up the Democratic base. Or how about the idea of, as you said, subpoenaing the former Secretary of State? I would just love to see a table of Republican men out to question the Secretary of State all over again on Benghazi. That's a great idea. More on women as a strategy to fire up the Democratic base.
More to come. Very interesting set of developments today, and we will see what comes out of that meeting with the leadership on the, we'll hear from Nancy Pelosi again in the next hour. McKay, Daphne, have a great weekend. Thanks to both of you.